All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Holly Harpel, and I'm the CEI Healthy Communities Initiative Vista, which is in partnership with the Kansas Health Foundation. And this presentation is called Health and More Policies. The goals of this presentation are to dissect the policy side of health inequities. And it's kind of a three-step process. I'll be listing the most common health inequities that are causing health disparities in the HCI network as reported by all the grantees when they were determining what their biggest health inequities were in their community. Then we'll be exploring deeper into the health disparities related to specifically income-based housing, food insecurity, and mental health infrastructure by looking at state and HCI counties data, which is mostly pulled from Kansas Health Matters and county health rankings and roadmaps. Finally, in each session, we'll be discussing policy recommendations in all those things: income-based housing, food insecurity, and mental health infrastructure. The main question I would ask you to reflect on during these presentations is how can policies reverse or perpetuate a population's lack of resources and/or reverse increased exposure to risk factors for health disparities? So the themes of HCI work that we have seen and have been reported that people are making strides on throughout Kansas under the HCI grant are addressing shortcomings in basic infrastructure, poverty, quality of life for those living in income-based housing, affordable housing options, including neighborhood infrastructure, the absence of full-service grocers with healthy food, discriminatory hiring and lack of educational support, unemployment opportunities, especially among Latinx and African American folks, and finally, mental health infrastructure, including trauma, toxic stress, lack of social connections. So if I haven't rated enough, the three topics that we'll be delving into with looking into like county specific data as well as appropriate policies are food insecurity, income-based housing, and mental health. And a preview at those policies would be like food taxes, financial stability, landlord policies, and integrating mental health services into normal settings, as well as talking about insurance coverage. So the first session and the first video in this playlist will cover food insecurity in Kansas and how it impacts HCI network data. Zooming out, I found that some pretty striking statistics about our state and the state of food insecurity in our state. 450,000 Kansans lacked reliable access to affordable, nutritious food because they did not have enough money to purchase it. And 32.8% of households with an income 185% below the federal poverty line have low or very low food security rates. 68% of food insecure households had one or more full-time workers, and 60% of Kansas single mothers households worried about not having enough food, and this was collected actually between 2011 and 2013. And this is all kind of, the first statistic just demonstrates that, people who are working are still, struggling to keep food on the tables, and it's more than we know. Another interesting statistic I found is that 69% of eligible people who are eligible for food benefits actually participate in it. 1/3 of those 426,000 food insecure Kansans couldn't qualify conversely for federal programs because they had incomes 185% above the federal poverty line. So people who were making $45K make up almost 1/3 of those food insecure Kansans, because they make a little bit too much to qualify for benefits. Now delving into specific county data, the overall rate of food insecurity in Kansas is 12.7% of Kansans. And looking at the specific data, we see that Riley County, which encompasses Manhattan, Kansas, which is the city where the HCI grantee is, has 17.5% of a food insecurity rate, and goes all the way down to Reno and Mitchell County at 13.2%. And so these counties seem to encompass those bigger cities, those more urban cities. And HCI counties that had the highest rates of low-income families with low access to a grocery store. So we're talking people who are already lacking the financial means, but also having access, geographic access to a healthy produce and grocery stores. This 8.7% of Kansans could have been described as this as of 2017. I'm looking at the counties. Kearney County out there is much more above most of them, as well as Wallace County and Sherman County. And then Crawford County is the sixth highest rate at 14.3%. Oh, and same branch here, Binney County at 9.4%, Sedgwick County with Wichita at 10.6%. So if you're talking that, 10.6% of what Wichita's like 500,000 people, that's a good amount of people that are struggling to, that are not only low income, but even though we think of Wichita as having so many grocery stores, it would be worth it to research what that is, what constitutes having low access. I'm sure there's a certain mile radius. Alrighty, now the HCI counties with the highest rates of families receiving SNAP with children. So, the SNAP program is supposed to increase food security for families. And so this isn't necessarily a negative account, but just highlights that there are so many families with young children who are having to depend on, taxpayer-funded programs in order to obtain food. So 54% of Kansans, 54% of Kansas families receiving SNAP have children. That's important to distinguish there, but there are really high rates in Sheridan County, Logan County, Thomas County, Riley County, all these above 50%. Again, Sedgwick County, the biggest county in the state. And then this list goes on. I mean, it seems like almost every county that's an HCI grantee has above 30% of their SNAP families with children, SNAP receiving families with children. And now getting to the policy recommendation side, when we're trying to address food security, and of course this is not an extensive list. I mostly researched and identified and compiled food policy or policies that could be, more tangible for small community groups to be advocating for, whether in their community or at the state level. And so these are also based off of extensive research from the Kansas Health Institute. So when we're looking at this, what's at play when it comes to food insecurity, just some things that I found are the food tax, financial stability, local grocery capacity, and maximizing participation. When speaking of food tax in relation to food security, it's so important to note that we're living in a totally different environment where Kansas has the second highest tax rate at 6.5% plus local add-ons. And we're one of only 14 states that has a food tax at the same rate as our sales tax. And there have been proposals to reduce or eliminate sales tax on healthier food items. And then Senate Bill 22, which was debated during the legislative session of spring 2019, people thought it would be hopeful, but it was actually Governor Laura Kelly that vetoed it, and citing that it was even too minimal. I think it was only a 1% cut to the rate. And Laura Kelly was citing that it just wasn't our focus right now, and if anything, it would need to be more substantial than that. So that was an interesting find for me, trying to find the explanation for why someone wouldn't want to cut food taxes Now speaking about financial stability in relation to food security, this is another recommendation to mandate personal finance courses in high school, as well as supporting and expanding vocational training opportunities, and also supporting low-income families to build savings and assets. This one is worth discussing, I think, extensively. just within your groups and seeing how feasible it is. I think this policy kind of, it potentially puts it on personal responsibility to individuals to secure their basic fundamentals, and might not necessarily be the only remedy for food insecurity, in my opinion. I decided to include local grocer capacity because I know there's a lot of HCI communities that are frontier communities with maybe one or two local grocers, that especially for example, Northwest Kansas, where people are even driving an hour and a half to get to Walmart, because some of the food co-ops are selling stuff for much more and closer to for example, Colorado. But how local grocers are struggling to even provide so much for the community, meet the needs of their community, is that they report low sales volume, narrow profit margins, required minimum buying requirements from vendors, taxes, high operating costs, and ability to compete with large chain grocers. So there's a lot of supply and demand issues here that just kind of highlight the struggles that even the grocers themselves are struggling with, and the community is compounded, like the community effect on food insecurity is compounded by also individuals not being able to afford high prices. And the final food policy recommendation that I have decided to include is the idea of maximizing participation in programs. As we said, I'm blanking out on the statistic, but a significant amount of people, I think it was around 40% of people who are eligible for SNAP benefits are not participating. And so it's curious to know what's deterring them from participating. I know in Kansas, I found that there was one policy at a time. It's not in place anymore, but where single individuals had a 3-month limitation to accessing those food benefits. And so having to come back from that and being told like, nope, no more, I think that could have disenfranchised people. But additionally, those income gaps and ability to receive benefits despite their need, that's addressing that fact that I think it was about 1/3 of food insecure Kansans, 1/3, just made just a bit above the federal poverty line with, I think, $45K for a family, and therefore weren't able to access benefits and pushing them into experiencing food insecurity. And so feel free, this concludes this session of our Health and More policies presentation, and I encourage you all to access the facilitation guide that has questions for discussion and seeing, people are already doing work in this realm. Food insecurity is a big topic in our HCI network, and so many people are doing so many creative things such as community gardens and farmers markets, as well as just trying to even address produce and Dollar General stores. And it's amazing work, and there's policy out there that we can continue to tackle. So tune in for the next presentation.